everyone, welcome to BYJU'S exam prep. I'm Nivedita Raje and I'm sorry this class started late. There were some technical difficulties that we were facing. Anyhow, so as everyone knows, we are doing a series which involves studying legal studies for class 11th and 12th. So today's topic is classification of laws. Let us begin. Now, before we begin, you should all know that we have started a comprehensive course for CLAT 24. This course is called comprehensive because it does not just prepare you for CLAT, it caters to all the other non-CLAT exams as well. And with this course, we take care of everything, right from preparation till the day of your exam. We are there with you. We give you all that you need preparation-wise, revision, practice, everything, and all the passages are curated, and they are, the closest simulation that you can have to CLAT. So if you wish to know more about this, you can just log into the app and figure out it yourself by unlocking a 3-day free trial access. Now, the agenda of this class is to understand the importance of classification, the subject matter on which the laws are classified, the scope on which the law is classified, the jurisdiction, and we shall also be doing a quiz. So classification basically means the division of law, right? So law is divided on a lot of bases: subject matter, scope. Subject matter is basically the topic or the, as the subject matter, the principle or the subject it is related to. उस लॉ का क्या सब्जेक्ट है, वो किस चीज पर बेस्ड है, इज व्हाट वी कॉल द law on subject matter, right? So on subject matter, law is divided into civil and criminal. This difference is pretty basic, right? And it is basic but very important. तो इसको जल्दी से समझ लेते हैं. Now, civil law basically is a kind of law that deals with private violations. Okay, that deals with private violations. Now, let's understand it through an example. Let's say there is a person A and there is his neighbor B. Okay, one fine day, A sees that B is walking his dog and there is a banana peel lying on the road, and he steps on that banana peel and he slips. Okay, and this banana peel is thrown by, it looks like something that I don't really want to say, but you know what a banana peel is, so I've tried to draw a banana peel. So let's say that there is a banana peel that C has thrown in the middle of the road. B is walking his dog. He sees this banana, he doesn't see this banana peel, steps on it and he slips. Right? Now, ordinarily, or if you think about it practically, what do you think your reaction would be? How would you react when you see this? You would laugh, isn't it? You'd start laughing immediately because it is indeed funny, a person slipping. But B would be affected, definitely, and B would have a right to sue C because of his negligence. B got hurt. He got his right violated. Now, in this situation, this entire exercise is very limited if you think about it. The effect of slipping, the effect of C's negligence is very limited. हम ये देख रहे हैं कि सी नेग्लिजेंट था, बिल्कुल उसने नेग्लिजेंटली एक बनाना पील को सड़क के बीच में फेंक दिया, जिसकी वजह से एक आदमी स्लिप हो गया और उसे चोट लग गई. अगर इस पूरे इंसिडेंट को आप एग्जामिन करेंगे तो आपको समझ आएगा कि सी का जो नेग्लिजेंस था उससे जो अफेक्ट हुआ है वो एक बहुत ही लिमिटेड सिनेरियो में हुआ है. Except B, no one is affected. You being a neutral spectator is not affected. Anybody else who's walking on the road is not affected. The maximum thing that they would get out of this entire incident is a good laugh, and that's it, right? Think about another situation. Think about that, since you know B, he's your neighbor, the next morning you are still laughing about the incident that happened to B, and suddenly A's mother tells him that last night B got robbed and murdered. Somebody robbed B's house and also murdered him. Now, previously, just the day before you were laughing because B slipped, and now you know that he was murdered in his house and his house was robbed. This incident would create an unrest. Okay, people who don't even know be that properly, people who only know live in the vicinity and are not familiar with B at all, not his friend, not his acquaintances, they just know that B used to live in this house, would also be under a situation of unrest. They would get scared, they'd start questioning everything, the society, security, the the kind of state of affairs that is there, like is even police doing the job? Because a person got murdered in his house while they were while there was security, while his house was locked. People start questioning these incidences on way of various parameters. Are we safe? What if this happens to us? What if it happens to somebody that we love? And how will we deal with the situation? What if I go to office and somebody runs me over? What if I go to office and somebody robs me? What if the robbers know the schedule of everyone in the society and they're waiting for people to get out of the house so that they can rob them? What if they murder me? What if they murder somebody that I love, etc.? All these questions would start coming to A's head. He would change, get his lock changed. He would see that his door is locked at least a million times before going to bed. All the people, everyone in the vicinity who got affected by this incident would constantly pester the police whether the robbers are caught, whether the murderers are caught. Now, this incident is different than this incident. In what manner? In what way? The effect of this incident is very limited. It only affected the person who was a party to it, that is B. But the effect of this incident is huge. It affects everybody in the society or everybody who know who B is. This is criminal law and this is civil law, in very simple words. So this kind of violation will be called a civil violation because the effect of civil violation is very limited. सिविल वायलेशन या सिविल लॉ का जो स्कोप होता है वो लिमिटेड होता है, वो सिर्फ पार्टीज तक ही लिमिटेड रहता है. एक केस में पार्टीज होती हैं, सिविल लॉ में सिर्फ यही पार्टीज हैं जिनको कुछ फर्क पड़ रहा है केस के होने की वजह से. लेकिन जब लॉ या केस क्रिमिनल होता है तो सिर्फ विक्टिम ही नहीं होता जो परेशान होता है, विक्टिम के साथ साथ बहुत सारे और लोग होते हैं जो उस वजह से परेशान हो गए होते हैं. Think about Nirbhaya. Who did we know Nirbhaya? Did anybody know Nirbhaya? Nobody knew Nirbhaya, right? She was her parents' daughter, but हमसे उसका कोई लेना देना नहीं था, हमसे उसका कोई रिश्ता नहीं था. लेकिन फिर भी उसके साथ हुए रेप की वजह से half of the country was outside India Gate lighting candles for her. Why did they do it? Because they wanted justice for a poor girl. Because they started questioning the safety of the society, the safety of women in society in general. Right, so this is what criminal law is. The effect of criminal law or an effect of crime is very wide. It affects a lot of people. It creates a situation of disturbance in public order, and that is why there is an entire machinery to make sure that the public order is restored. As soon as a criminal is caught, he is not just given a fine, he's not imposed with a fine or a monetary liability. He's instead put in jail because of what he did, so that people can rest, people can take a sigh of relief, so that they know that the criminal is inside the bars, and it would create a deterrent in the society. Right, people would see कि भाई अगर चोरी करो, रॉबरी करो, इस तरह की हरकतें करो तो जेल हो जाती है, जिंदगी बर्बाद हो जाती है, तो लोग रुकेंगे. और इसी तरह का जो सिचुएशन है वो लोगों को एक सुकून देता है कि चलो गुनाह करने वाला, गलत करने वाला भी सलाखों के पीछे, हम सेफ हैं, है ना. सिविल लॉ में किसी को कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता. पड़ोसी की प्रॉपर्टी का मैटर है, वो बेचारा सदियों से परेशान है क्योंकि प्रॉपर्टी का कोई एडजुडिकेशन नहीं निकल रहा. आपको क्या फर्क पड़ेगा? 1% नहीं पड़ेगा. पड़ोसी के घर में डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस होता है, उसकी वाइफ उसे मारती है, आप ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा हंसेंगे लेकिन आपको पर्सनली कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा. राइट, लेकिन पड़ोसी अगर मर्डर हो जाता है, उसके घर में चोरी हो जाती है, तो आप एकदम हिल जाएंगे, अरे मेरे घर में हो गया तो, मेरे साथ हो गया तो, ये वो फलाना. राइट, तो ये है क्रिमिनल लॉ. और पुराने जो इंसिडेंट्स जो मैंने कहे वो है सिविल लॉ. राइट, सो क्रिमिनल लॉ इज एनी एक्ट प्रोहिबिटेड अंडर द क्रिमिनल लॉ इज a criminal law. Basically any act that creates an impact on the society as whole is called a crime. Right, in general, what is an offense? Offense is an act punishable by IPC. तो क्राइम वो एक्ट है जिसकी सजा मिलती है क्योंकि उसकी वजह से पूरी सोसाइटी अनरेस्ट में आ जाती है, पब्लिक ऑर्डर डिस्टर्ब हो जाता है, तो आपको पब्लिक ऑर्डर को डिस्टर्ब करने की सजा दी जाती है। क्राइम और ऑफेंस में क्या अंतर है? क्राइम बेसिकली इज अ ब्रॉडर कैटेगरी, इट इज अ जीनस, एंड क्राइम इज अ स्पीसीज, सॉरी ऑफेंस इज अ स्पीसीज, राइट। तो ऑफेंस वो हर एक्ट है जिसे आईपीसी पनिश करती है। एक्शन इज इनिशिएटेड बाय द स्टेट, दैट इज द गवर्नमेंट, गवर्नमेंट स्टेट एक्शन इनिशिएट करती है, इसलिए ऑल द क्रिमिनल केसेस दैट यू रीड start with a particular state in which they were committed. For example, state of Bombay versus Kim Nanavati, or state of Punjab versus Bachchan Singh, and so on. Remedy is provided in form of imprisonment or fine or both. Just give me 1 second, will you? I am on the wrong pedestal, right? So let me just shift myself. I just noted it. Actually, I don't know how to shift. Just give me a second, guys. Let me try and चलो, जब तक नहीं आ रहा सोल्यूशन तब तक पढ़ लेते हैं, राइट। Yes, moving on. Civil law is offense which are private in nature, like I said, only an individual involved, society has nothing to do with it. Remedy is basically compensation, just a monetary remedy. आप जिसका नुकसान हुआ है उसको पैसा दे दें और वो खुश हो जाता है, इससे ज़्यादा की ज़रूरत नहीं पड़ती। So family disputes, property disputes, everything is a civil action. Then classification based on the scope of law. Scope of law is the ambit of law. What is the law actually providing is what scope is, right? So on the scope we have two divisions, substantive and procedural. Substantive law is a kind of law that provides you with rights. Okay, what rights do you have? What rights do you have? For example, right to freedom of speech and expression. Right to freedom of speech and expression is a right. Which law provides it? The law that provides it is the Constitution of India. Just let us fix it, guys. Now we are okay. I'll write on the other side, don't worry. Anyhow, so a law that gives you rights is called a substantive law. कोई भी law जो आपको rights दे, आपके पास क्या rights हैं और किस तरह से आप अपनी लाइफ को गवर्न कर सकते हैं. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, लॉ ऑफ कॉन्ट्रैक्ट और इंडियन कॉन्ट्रैक्ट एक्ट IC tells you what contract is all about. किस तरह से बनेगा कॉन्ट्रैक्ट, हाउ विल अ कॉन्ट्रैक्ट बी फॉर्म्ड, व्हाट आर द एलिमेंट्स दैट आर रिक्वायर्ड, the journey from agreement to contract, right? How are the parties bound by the contract? All these things gives rights to parties as to conduct their life or any activity that they're doing. अगर कॉन्ट्रैक्ट बन रहा है तो फिर कॉन्ट्रैक्ट किस तरह से बनना चाहिए, अगर कॉन्ट्रैक्ट में ये चीज़ें हैं तो फिर उसका क्या स्कोप होगा, कॉन्ट्रैक्ट वॉइड कब होगा, आदमी क्या रेमेडी क्लेम कर सकता है, कब उसका राइट होगा, कब उसका राइट नहीं होगा, ये सब सब्सटैंटिव लॉ का पार्ट है। प्रोसीजरल लॉ जो है वो इन राइट्स को एनफोर्स करने का प्रोसेस देता है। फॉर एग्जाम्पल, लेट्स से दैट योर राइट इज वायलेटेड, you have freedom of speech and expression, okay, or let's say you have a contract, you entered into a contract with A, and the contract was that A would supply you with 50 kg rice every Thursday at 5 p.m. ठीक है, this is the contract, 50 kg rice every Thursday at 5 p.m. Now this is what Indian Contract Act is. It tells you that contract gives you certain rights, this is how a contract should be, etc. But if A violates the contract, what would you do? अगर एक कॉन्ट्रैक्ट को वायलेट कर देता है और आपको थर्सडे को 50 किलो चावल नहीं मिलता, तो आप क्या करेंगे? आप उसे सू करेंगे, राइट? आप उस पर केस कर देंगे। एंड इफ यू institute a case against him, if you do sue him, where is the process given? How would you sue him? What remedies do you have? What exactly can you claim if the contract is breached? How would you go about it? Where would you go first? What would be the steps? Institution of complaint is a several step process. So how would you go about it? First there would be an institution, then something, then something, then something, and finally there would be a judgment. But before the judgment or the order comes out or a remedy comes out, there would be several processes that you would need to follow. First you would have to prove that there was a breach, then you would have to prove that there was a contract, it was a full-fledged valid contract, absolutely per the standards of Indian Contract Act, all the steps, and finally an order would come out that would give you your remedy. So the order or the process which tells you how to go about it, or the process that gives you the process of, or the law that gives you a process of enforcing your right is called the procedural law. वो लॉ जो आपको राइट दे रहा है वो है सब्सटैंटिव लॉ। उस राइट के वायलेट होने पर आप क्या करेंगे और कैसे कैसे करेंगे, वो है प्रोसीजरल लॉ, इन सिंपल वर्ड्स। राइट, सब्सटैंटिव मैटर बेस्ड ऑन सब्जेक्ट मैटर ऑफ लॉ, राइट्स लाइबिलिटीज ऑफ द पार्टीज, जैसे कि कंज्यूमर प्रोटेक्शन, राइट टू इंफॉर्मेशन, एटसेट्रा, वेरी सिंपल। Procedural law based on procedure to be followed by the executive and judiciary in the implementation of law. So it is not just, procedural law is not just for you to do what, for you to, understand what you needs to do, but the executive and the judiciary is also bound by the procedural law. So what are these, what are these entities supposed to do when such thing happens is also determined, laid down by the procedural law. Law which define procedures and protocols for enforcing substantive law. Example is CPC, Code of Civil Procedure, Code of Criminal Procedure. Then we have classification based on jurisdiction. So jurisdiction is basically where would that law apply. Okay, where would that law apply? IPC can only apply to the citizens of India. Is it? No. IPC basically applies on everybody who is within the Indian territory, citizen or non-citizen, right? On citizens, IPC has an extraterritorial application, which means that if a citizen is outside India and commits a crime, then also IPC can punish him, provided the crime is, aimed towards the country, India. So IPC basically only applies on Indian soil and on people who are Indian citizens. This is private law or domestic law or municipal law. So a law which is applied on your people in your country is called a municipal law or a domestic law. But a law which has an international application, which applies to, other countries, people belonging to other countries, is called an international law. Okay. Now international law is basically divided into private and public, of course. What exactly is international law? International law is a branch of law that gives out rules and regulations on which the nation build their relations. So what relations would be between two nations, right? Are they trade relations, or they, any kind of relation. Just say a country is taking loan from another country, or a country is involved in a certain kind of trade with another country, or they have any other kind of a relation. It can be political, it can be financial, it can be diplomatic. All kinds of relationship basically are governed by international law. So international law is divided into public international law and private international law. Public international law, as the word public suggests, is a law that governs the relation between the countries and the nations. There is no private interest involved, there is no citizen involved, there is no individual involved in this. How would two countries manage their relationships? Okay, whatever kind of relationship might be there, political, diplomatic, financial, etc., would be determined on the basis of public international law, rules, regulation, treaties, etc. That is public international law. There is no individual party involved, no company involved. But as soon as there is, citizens or private individuals involved, that branch is called private international law. For example, let's say there is a multinational corporation which is headquartered in the US, but it has its branch all over the world, and one of its branches there in India also. Okay, now there's a Russian citizen who works in this MNC, and he works at its Indian branch. Now let's say that one of his rights is violated. He's a Russian, he's living in India, he's working for a company which is not an Indian company, it is a company based out of US, right? Now there are multiple countries involved, so which law would apply is a confusion. I am a Russian Russian law should apply. Why would that be? But even if you are a Russian, you are working for a country which is not Russian, it is American. Now India would say, so what? The American company is working on our soil, so our law should apply. So three countries are basically at a tussle with each other, which law should apply. And in this situation, private international law comes into picture. We have a neutral law which would, help in this situation and help this Russian. So it is a branch of international law which is applicable on individual or relations between individuals based on international borders. This is private international law. I hope it is clear. We have already understood it. Body of rules and regulations governing relationship between nations. These are binding rules which are recognized by the countries mutually. Okay. Then we have private international law, which means law dealing with cases having foreign element, relates to rights of private citizens of different countries, marriage, adoption, etc. Right. Then we have municipal law, already discussed. Domestic or national law regulate the relationship between the state and the citizen, which means country and the citizen. Country and citizen and everyone else living in that country, non-citizens also living in that country. So the same law would apply on them also. So this is what we call the branch of domestic law or municipal law. Municipal law is also classified into two laws. Domestic law is classified into public and private. What is the difference between public, domestic? IPC would apply on everyone in India. Similarly, Constitution gives rights to everyone in this country, not just a person of a particular state. So IPC, Constitution, family law, etc. Not family law, sorry. IPC, Constitution, CRPC, Indian Contract Act, TPA, Transfer of Property Act, all these legislations are uniformly applied on every citizen in this country. But let's say that there are people who, have access to only a kind of law. For example, two Hindus marry each other. A and B are two Hindus, they marry each other. Their marriage and everything that happens after or during their marriage, within their marriage, would be determined by the Hindu Marriage Act. Then there are two people, A and B, both are Christians. If they marry, the only law that applies to them would be a Christian code, right? HMA, Hindu Marriage Act, will not apply to these people on account of them being Christians. Similarly, Muslims have their own laws, Christians have their own laws, Hindus have their own laws. All the religious communities have their own laws to determine their personal relationships. So if you come from a particular faction, or if you come from a particular religion or a community, and because of being part of that community or religion, there is a special law that governs you and your life and your religion. That special law is called a private law or a personal law, right? So all these personal laws are basically Hindu Marriage Act or Hindu laws, Muslim laws, Christian laws, Parsi laws, and so on. Okay, there are some property laws also that are applicable to these people. Personal law, property law, and law of obligation, law of tort is not a private municipal law. Okay, there is no law of obligation. It is given in their book, but don't pay much attention to it. There are some mistakes that people make. Right, so basically personal laws would fall in this category, or special law. Let's say there is a, legislation, sexual harassment of women at workplace. Okay, sexual harassment of women at workplace. Also known as POSH. POSH is available only to women working in offices or anywhere. It is not available to men, it is not available to children, it is not available to transgenders. Any person other than women cannot have access to this law, has no remedy in this law. This law is a kind of personal law or a private law. It only and only applies on women. Right? So a law that applies only to a faction or a particular group of people is what we call a personal law. So not just the religious laws are not the only laws which are personal. There are several laws which are personal. Okay. Let's do our exercise. The importance of classification of law is systematic arrangement of rules, understanding the interrelation of rules, profession and students of law. What is the importance? The answer is D, all, right? Dash deals with the acts prohibited under criminal laws in India. What is it? Criminal laws. Okay, very clear. Question number 3. In dash type of law is the remedy provided in form of compensation, damages or injunction. What is the kind of law? Civil law. We have already done this. Dash defines the procedures and protocols for enforcing substantive law. The answer to this is procedural laws. Then we have dash governs the relationship between nations. What it is? What is it? Public international law. Dash is the branch of law that deals with cases having a foreign element. The answer is private international law. ठीक है, 5 to 6 marks का question इस topic से classification of law से आ सकता है. The classification law is very easy. So make sure you have learned what I've taught you. There would be a question and the question would come with an option, like there would be a choice, right? So if you choose this question, it would be more scoring. अगर classification of law as a choice आता है और choice किसी भी और topic के साथ मिलती है, I would suggest that you go for this instead of going for any other question. Dash branch of municipal law regulates relationship between state and its subject. The answer is public municipal law. Mutual rights and obligations are governed by personal law. Sorry, wait. Mutual rights and obligations are governed by law of obligations. Law of obligations basically are the obligations that gives out the terms or rights and duties of parties involved in a certain kind of arrangement. So TPA is a kind of law of obligation. ICA, Indian Contract Act, is a kind of obligation laws. Okay. Now these are also personal laws in a way that TPA governs only a kind of property or governs only the parties which are involved in. Basically, it is not a personal law. No, I won't categorize it as a personal law. Personally, I won't categorize it as a personal law. These are public laws. TPA governs every transfer of property all over the country, right? Irrespective of their religion, caste, and domicile and everything. Similarly, Indian Contract Act is also applicable on the entire country. So they are not personal laws. So that's it for today, guys. Thank you so much. I hope you learned something from it. I shall see you again in some time. Like I said, we are going to do a Hindu exercise, or we shall be analyzing an editorial of the Hindu from a legal perspective. Very, very important, considering what all that is happening. And it was a beautiful editorial that I did want to discuss with you. And there's a high chance that it is there, right? So let us meet at 6 precisely in 20 minutes. Till then, everyone, take care. Bye bye. Thank you so much.